We've all been there. It's a fresh wipe, you open up the map and have no idea where to place your base. In this video, I'm going to share all the knowledge I've gained over the years of playing the game as to where to place a base, not only for solo players, but for groups as well. Now for deciding where to place your base, there are three key elements. Firstly, the monument you want to main, or monuments you want to be nearby. Secondly, the biome of choice. And lastly, the topology of the land. If you're a new player to Rust maps are procedurally generated. This means every single wipe, the monuments will be in a different location. For this reason, I won't be giving specific coordinates for base locations, just guidelines as to where to build. For solo players, building near to a tier 1, tier 2 or potentially tier 3 monument depending on your skill level is ideal, but keeping the base out of the way is the key thing here. You don't necessarily want to be in a high traffic area or an area which is going to be heavily contested by big groups. It can just slow down your progress and you're better off being inconspicuous. Being near a recycler is also very important. For this reason, monuments such as Bandit and Outpost are fantastic because the recyclers there are within the safe zones. Some good monuments to look for as a solo player are water treatment, train yards, sewer branch, SATs and the dome. Underwater labs is also an option, but you kind of want it to be a small one because otherwise they're a little bit unmanageable to solo loot and solo defend. Not only that, mini monuments such as power stations can be your best friend as they're very easy early game scrap. For the higher skilled players, monuments such as the launch site are not off the cards. They have their own set of challenges to traverse and a very high risk, high reward. Players such as Alone in Tokyo and Posty almost always build next to launch site. For duos and trios, it's very similar to solos, except monuments such as Power Plant and Airfield are also viable options. I would also highly recommend the underwater labs as duos and trios. You can build up a lot of scrap in a short amount of time with it, which can really get your wipe going. And once again, just like with solos, main monuments are not off the table, but you will find that the larger groups are built near them, and it can significantly slow your progress down and increase your chance of getting raided. For small groups to Zergs, pretty much anything goes. The main monuments are always going to be the most consistent in providing PvP and loot, but if you want a quick start, tier 2 monuments can also be great, and having a tier 1 monument nearby for recycling can also be really handy, as due to the fact that the main monuments are often contested, you don't always want to be recycling there. Places like the mining outpost and supermarket can provide it, but they're usually pretty grubby, so always be careful. For biomes, they each hold their unique pros and cons. Snow is a personal favourite of mine because it's node heavy, you get high frames, and it often leads to great PvP. You're also less likely to run into grubs and people trying to cheese you, as you need a decent layer of cold protection in order to be there. The only real caveat is that cloth can be a real problem in the snow as there's no hemp spawns. However, usually there's yogis about, so you can always kill them. Tier 3 monuments are often placed within the snow, making it more common to find small groups and Zergs there. For solos, the snow is very much high risk, high reward. Most geared players, if they're in full metal, will be losing HP due to the cold, which can make making a play a little bit easier. The grassland is a great all-arounder. It's heavy in cloth, farm, wood, it's warm, and mushroom forests and swamps are dotted between them, which are good sources of food. It's often where you're going to find the majority of solo to trio players building, as it's just a little bit more forgiving than the snow. It's also slightly easier to blend in there. If you're living in a 2x2, if you're in the snow, chances you get raided by a Zerg as they might think it's a farm base. However, the grasslands is usually covered in 2x1s and 2x2s, meaning that your chance of getting raided is often a lot lower there. Overall, it's a great option for any group size, but if you're a solo, I'd highly recommend being there. Just be aware that the middle of the map usually gives itself to roof campers, and that can be a real pain in the ass. The desert is one of the harshest environments because it's cold at night, there's very limited cloth, not many nodes. However, it is very heavy in sulfur, holds the monuments of the giant excavator and the abandoned mill base, has great visibility in FPS and is often very flat for building. For solos, it's not advisable to live in the desert. Giant Excav and abandoned mill base are not exactly tailored to solos, as you need diesel to run the giant Excav, and getting shot at by scientists at the mill base is a quick way to alert people you're there. And remember, this is just a guide, so if you're a solo and like to live in the desert, that's totally fine. At the end of the day, biome is not that important, but it is worth factoring in the pros and cons of each one if you can't decide between two different locations. The third consideration is topology. Rust maps have a wide and varied range of topology which you can build upon. This ranges from ice lakes to caves to rock formations. It's important to factor in the topology when building your base. If you've got quite a large design, you're going to need a flat area so you don't come into any clipping issues with the foundations. Places such as ice lakes are ideal for this as they're flat. but just be careful as some of them do have a big rock in the middle. Beaches are also very flat and often have really good access to the underwater labs and oil rigs. Caves are one of the most efficient ways to build a base that is hard to raid. This is due to the fact that in most caves there is one way in and one way out. This forces the raider on one specific path in order to break into your base, which can be heavily reinforced and can make it a real pain to raid, and most people won't bother. Another thing to consider is node spawns. Large rock formations and cliffs are hotspots for nodes, so always look out for them, and they're good to keep near your base if you think farm might be a bit of an issue. The same applies for roads, as obviously there's scrap farm and barrels that spawn on the roads, so if you're concerned about your scrap, you can always get a little extra from the roads. And in Rust, the size of your base isn't necessarily what will get it raided. The larger bases often promote having more loot in them. We've had fantastic wipes when we've ran in literally just a honeycomb 2x2, and we've had M2s inside of it and people don't know. So the psychological side is something you want to factor in, but it's very hard to sort of give specific advice as how to do that. And like I said earlier, all of this is just a guide. So it's not strict rules as to where you have to build your base, just really some guidance for any newer players who are a little bit unsure. Anyway guys, I'm sure I've missed a few bits out. Feel free to put what your favourite place to base is in the comments and share any extra advice you've got for people, as I'm sure I've missed some bits and bobs out. And yeah, hope some of the advice was useful, and cheers for watching.